I'll never forget that night. The night I saw her, the frost-kissed spirit. The wind had been howling like a wounded animal, and the moon had turned a sickly shade of blue. I was far from home, far from everything I knew. And I wasn't alone. But I wish I had been. It all started a few days before New Year's Eve. I had taken a trip to my aunt's village, deep in the hills. I'd grown up hearing about the village, but I'd never been there. It was a place full of stories of spirits, mysterious happenings, and strange occurrences. I hadn't believed them then. I didn't believe them when I arrived either. Not until that night. The village was small, just a handful of homes scattered on the edge of a dense forest. The houses were made of wood, with thick-thatched roofs that smelled of smoke and earth. The people were kind, but quiet. They went about their business without much fuss. The elders told tales of old spirits that lived in the forest, of the cold winds that carried whispers, and of the frost that could make you lose your way and never return. I had always thought those stories were just that, stories. Until I learned otherwise. The first few days of my visit were uneventful. I spent my time helping my aunt with chores, visiting the village square, and listening to the children play. The village was alive with preparations for the new year. There were songs to be sung, dances to be danced, and food to be shared. But as the days passed, I began to notice something strange. The air had begun to grow colder, sharper. Even the villagers noticed it. They spoke in hushed voices about an early frost that had come, sweeping through the land like a ghost. On the evening of December 31st, my aunt invited me to stay up with her and the family to celebrate the arrival of the new year. There would be a big feast, she said, and then they would go outside to light the bonfire and sing the old songs. I agreed. It felt like the right thing to do. That night, I remember the sky being unusually clear, the stars like tiny holes in a dark cloth. The wind had calmed, and the air felt still, but it was bitterly cold. It was as if the world had been frozen in time. We gathered around the fire outside. The flames flickered and danced in the night air, casting shadows on the faces of my aunt and the villagers who had come to join us. Their faces were warm, their laughter filling the air. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My aunt noticed it too. She had been watching the sky, her eyes narrowed, and her lips pressed together in thought. "There's something about tonight," she said quietly. "The frost comes early this year. The spirits are restless." I laughed, half out of nervousness, but she didn't smile back. As the evening wore on, the celebrations grew louder. There was food to be eaten, music to be played, and stories to be told. But around midnight, as the villagers began to sing the song that welcomed the new year, something happened. The frost that had been creeping across the land seemed to intensify. It was as if a cold wind had swept down from the mountains and settled over us all. The temperature dropped suddenly, and even the fire seemed to flicker uncertainly. Then, it happened. Out of nowhere, a strange figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the firelight, but when I blinked, I saw her clearly. She was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was pale, almost white, and her hair was long and silver, like strands of ice. She wore a flowing gown of frost, and her eyes that glowed faintly with an otherworldly light, stared straight at me. The villagers froze. No one moved, not even to breathe. I could feel the weight of the cold pressing down on me, like an invisible hand wrapping around my chest. "Who is she?" I whispered to my aunt, my voice trembling. My aunt didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped forward, her eyes wide with fear. "It's her," she said softly. "The frost-kissed spirit. She comes every year, on this night, to make a wish." "A wish?" I echoed. "But, she looks like she's dead." The villagers had begun to murmur among themselves, but no one dared to approach her. The frost-kissed spirit didn't speak, but she moved slowly toward the fire, her presence chilling the air even further. Her feet never seemed to touch the ground. I watched, unable to look away, as she reached the fire. The flames shifted as though they were afraid of her, bending away from her icy presence. For a long time, no one said a word. It was as though the whole world had gone silent, except for the crackling of the fire. Then, just as quickly as she had appeared, the frost-kissed spirit raised her hand and gestured toward the sky. A strange, cold wind began to blow again, lifting the fire's embers into the air, swirling them around in a spiral. And as the wind whistled, I could have sworn I heard her whisper something, her voice so faint that it was almost lost in the wind. It sounded like a wish, though I couldn't make out the words. For a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath. Then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, the frost-kissed spirit began to fade. Her form became less distinct, more like a shadow of ice against the dark sky. The cold wind died down, and the fire returned to normal, though the air still felt unnaturally chilly. The villagers began to speak again, their voices hushed but filled with awe. What did she wish for? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. My aunt, her face pale and tight with fear, shook her head. We can never know. The frost-kissed spirit comes to make her wish, but she never tells us. She never stays long enough. I was confused. But what does it mean? What does the spirit want? The spirit doesn't come to take. She comes to remind us. To remind us that the old year is gone, and the new year is here. To remind us that the frost can come and go, but we must always keep moving forward. We stayed outside for a while longer, but the celebration had changed. The joy was still there, but it was quieter, more subdued. No one spoke much about the spirit, but there was a sense of relief when the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. It was New Year's Day. I went to bed early, my mind racing with everything I had seen. I couldn't shake the image of the frost-kissed spirit from my mind. I wondered about her wish, about what she had wanted. And I wondered if she had made the same wish for the villagers every year. The days that followed felt different. The frost continued to linger in the air, but it wasn't as harsh. The villagers seemed calmer, more at peace. As if the spirit's visit had given them something they hadn't known they needed. And as for me, I felt as though something deep inside had shifted. The year had ended, and the new one had begun, not just with a change of the calendar, but with a reminder that time moves on, and we must, too. As I left my aunt's village and made my way back home, I felt a quiet sense of hope. The frost-kissed spirit had come, had made her wish, and had gone. But the wish wasn't just for the villagers. It was for all of us, to remind us that the cold winds of life would come, but we could face them, as long as we kept moving forward. And so, as I step into this new year, I wish you the same. May your year be filled with warmth, hope, and the courage to face whatever comes your way. Happy New Year. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, so we can bring you more amazing stories.